My name is Ron Foster. I'm the pastor of student ministries and young adult ministries here, and Pastor Bill will be back up with you next week. But we started a 2-week mini-series last week looking at Noah, and we're going to continue that this week. Now, last week, just to kind of lay the groundwork, we looked at Genesis chapter 6. And we kind of focused in on discerning the call of God, discerning God's call. What does God want for you in your life? And we talked about why God was going to be destroying the world, and that he was preserving Noah, that Noah walked with God, and that he was one of the few that were given that title of walking with God. And the flood had not yet started when we left last week. We're going to get into that this week. And we're going to be focusing, it's on the front of your bulletin there, but also we're going to be focusing on just this thought of waiting. There was a lot of waiting involved in this story, and we're going to get into that. And it just kind of made me reflect on things that I've waited for over the years. None of us enjoy waiting, right? Even in fast food, we have drive-throughs, and you can go through the drive-through, and as you pull up to the window to get your food, if they're not quite done making your food, rather than have the person behind you wait, they now have parking spaces for the drive-through people, right? So they say, "Oh, we need you to pull into the spot over there because we just dropped your fries, and they need to continue to cook." So you pull into the parking spot, and you're like, "Oh, I got to go in the spot." That means you have to wait longer, like an extra minute for your food. And there's so many things in this world, that require waiting. But in the waiting is the test, right? I was thinking back when I was a kid. I had two, especially toys kind of thing that I was really into. One was Transformers. I loved I collected a bunch of those and played with them. The other, my favorite, were G.I. Joe characters. I had so many of these G.I. Joe characters, and me and my brother would have these epic battles with them. We'd go out in the backyard, we'd set them up and destroy them, and if it was bad weather, then we'd set them up in the living room and take over the living room and destroy them. And it was just awesome. We loved playing with these G.I. Joe characters, and they even had a cartoon to go with it. And I watched that cartoon religiously, like every morning getting ready for school. I'm like, this is awesome. Yo, Joe. And all this. I loved watching G.I. Joe. And one day they introduced a new character. And at the end of the episode, they said, this character will be available as an action figure, but they're not going to sell it in stores. I said, do tell. And they said, you have to collect, when you would purchase a G.I. Joe character that comes with this UPC code or symbol or something, I don't know. And you had to collect so many of those, put them in an envelope. Some of you guys are smiling and nodding because you've done this. And you did put a couple dollars for shipping and handling. And I did that for two different times they did this. The first one was Sergeant Slaughter. Sergeant Slaughter was actually a WWF wrestling character that somehow got worked into G.I. Joe on the cartoon, and it was awesome. And I was like, I must have this action figure. So the other one, why this guy got a G.I. Joe character, I don't know, but I needed it, was the fridge. William Perry. If you don't know who he is, he was a defensive lineman for the Chicago Bears, 1985 Super Bowl. One of the first 300-pound linemen. Now they're everywhere, but back then it was pretty rare. And I just remember, I put these UPC codes in this envelope, sent it away to this address, that you had to watch the episode a few times to get the full address. You couldn't just pause live TV back then. You had to I missed it. You have to wait till the next day. Hopefully they'll re-show it again and finish writing it down. So, so I just remember sending that, and just every day after school after that, checking the mailbox. If you've ever seen A Christmas Story, I was Ralphie looking for the decoder pin. Man, Sergeant Slaughter, when is he going to get here? And just weeks went by, and every day and just that anticipation leading up to maybe today's the day. No. Close it. I don't even get the mail at that point. Just leave it in there. That was the anticipation I had, and eventually I started losing hope. Maybe this was a hoax. Maybe they're not going to send me Sergeant Slaughter at all, And eventually one day came 2 months later, and then I blew him up a bunch of times too. It was awesome, and it was just this thought of waiting for things. There have been things in my life that God has laid on my heart, given me a desire for, that maybe only took a week to fulfill. Other times, same thing. Maybe it took months. Some things took years. There are some things that have yet to be fulfilled. And with all of them, there's a waiting period. And we're gonna look a little bit about that today. And what is it that you're waiting on? How do you do with wait? How do you do with waiting? And we're going to see Noah had to do some waiting. So in Genesis chapter 7, we're going to start there. We're going to read the first 5 verses, and then we'll pause for a minute. But in Genesis chapter 7, starting in verse 1, it says this: Then the Lord said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground." And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. So in Genesis chapter 6, God comes to Noah and he says, "You've been walking with me. You're the only person on earth that's following me, that has even given thought to me. I'm regretting making man, and so I'm going to wipe out the earth, and we're going to start this thing over. You're going to be preserved, you and your wife and your kids and their wives, and these animals that I will bring to you. But you need to build a boat, Noah, and here are the dimensions for it. Here's the type of wood you're going to use. This is what you'll do. Here's how I want you to build it. Ready? Go." So Noah's given this assignment. And now it's the culmination of that assignment. And so the first thing we see, it's time to start loading up. He says, "All right, Noah, you've built the boat. It's ready. It's worthy to be on the water. And so let's start bringing in all those animals. Get your family in. Let's get everybody inside. Bring in the animals." So there's speculation as to how the animals got there. Some people speculate that maybe God caused a migration for them to show up at Noah's doorstep. Other people are just like, hey, throughout the Bible, God controls animals and they don't seem to have a problem obeying him. So maybe just, okay, you two go, and just that kind of thing. However it is, the animals are there. They're ready to go. I don't know if they had pens and fences. I don't know how they were keeping them for that amount of time of the build, but now they're ready to be brought onto the boat. And God is saying that this is going to happen in 7 days. And he says it will rain constantly for 40 days and 40 nights. And this is the first mention of the rain. In Genesis chapter 6, God told Noah that it would flood and that would destroy the earth. He never said it would rain. He just said, I'm going to flood. There will be a great flood, and that's what will destroy the earth. One of the things in studying for all of this is it was interesting to discover that there are over 200 different cultures that have in their history of a worldwide flood. regardless of if they have ever seen a Bible or not, but in their recorded history, evidence of a worldwide flood. I thought that was pretty interesting. But it says, so this is the first time God mentions the rain part. A week before it's going to start, it's going to rain. And so many people speculate maybe Noah didn't even know what that meant. Like, okay, it's going to rain, whatever that means. Okay, get on the boat. That's what I heard. All right, so now they have to get on the boat. And I don't know about you, but if Noah's kids are anything like many kids, this is a week in advance of the water coming. If I were to get on there, I don't even want to pick on my own kids. Let's pick on the youth group. If I were to say, guys, the rain is coming, it's going to flood, we have to get on the boat, it's coming in a week. Well, why do we have to get on now? It's coming in a week. I know, but God said that we're supposed to start getting everything on and get on the boat now, and then it'll happen. Maybe you heard God wrong. He said it starts in a week. Why would we even go on the boat? It's in 7 days. Just get on the boat, right? Like, imagine your family and you trying to convince the rest of your family that we got to go sit in a boat for 7 days and there's no water around. How would that go? I'm curious how that went for Noah and the family. Like, okay, all right, guys, we got everybody in here. Dad, is something supposed to happen? Well, not for 6 days. Dad, we got to do something. Can't play Monopoly because that's not been invented yet. Like, what did they do? I don't know. It's a big boat. Maybe they just separated from each other for a while and got on each other's nerves. I think of, especially in families, when you're on a long car trip, everyone figures out the thing that annoys everybody else, and they do it on purpose. Like someone might be it'd be quiet in the car and just, stop it. How was that dynamic? And they couldn't, hey, go get on the boat. But, how much questioning was there of Noah? Because God didn't speak to the kids. He spoke to Noah, who then had to relay it to the kids and to his wife. But it says, and Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. So I don't know if he threatened them and just get on the boat. They all got on the boat. Verse 6 is where we continue. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. So a couple of things to point out. It mentions Noah's age here. The last time we're given Noah's age is at the end of Genesis chapter 5, where it says that Noah was 500 years old. So many people believe that from the time that he was given the command that he was probably around 500, and now it says that he is 600 years old. So you do the math. It's a long time to wait for a promise to be fulfilled. Some people speculate that Noah was also at the same time during this build that he was preaching to the people around him. That's based off a verse in 2 Peter chapter 2 where it calls Noah the herald of righteousness. And so people take that word herald because a herald proclaims and say that he was preaching righteousness. We don't necessarily have an account of that here in Genesis, so I'm not going to speculate on whether he did or didn't do that. But it was a long period of time. Some people speculate between 75 and 100 years from the time he received the command to start building to the time that it was done. And I can't help but wonder, did he ever have moments where he's like, God, is this really going to happen? Is this really, truly going to happen? Is there times when his family was questioning their dad or even her husband? Are you sure this is what God wants you to build? Did he start building this and it turned out in a circle shape and oh, that's not right, and you have to start over? I don't know. I'm just curious. I want to watch that DVD when I get to heaven. I want to see it in high def and just see what that was like. And it was nothing like the new Noah movie that came out. If you've seen that really doesn't follow the biblical account. So I hope you weren't banking on the movie to give you some insight, because it's pretty wacky. We can talk later on that. So the last time we see Noah, he was 500. Now he's 600. This was a great amount of time to wait from the time Noah received the command or the promise for it finally to be fulfilled. I want you to think about some things that you've had to wait for in life. None of mine compare. With God's given me a desire for something, wait on it, and I've not had to wait 100 years for anything yet. I say yet. Could happen, I've not had to wait that long for anything. And I believe that what God was doing for Noah and his family is the same thing that God does for us when he puts a desire in our heart or a promise to fulfill. And the time that we're given that command or that desire to the time it's fulfilled is that God prepares us while we wait. God is preparing you to fulfill that promise or to fulfill whatever it is. God has placed on you a desire for a relationship or a job or to serve in a ministry a certain way, or you fill in the blanks. There's so many things I could put in there, but God has placed that desire, and God wants to prepare you now. He gives us the desire first, and then he prepares us for the job. He prepares us for the relationship. He prepares us to receive it. And that's what God was doing with Noah. The Bible is filled with men and women who had to wait. That God gave them a dream or a vision or a promise, and they waited. Joseph had a dream when he was young of his brothers bowing down to him, and it was years later that actually happened. It didn't happen right away. Abraham was given the promise of children, and that didn't happen until 25 years later after he was given that promise. Jesus waited 30 years to begin his ministry. We could go on and on, but the Bible is filled of God preparing people and waiting. We'll continue now, verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. So we see a couple things to just point out from this scripture. We see in verse 11, it says the great deep burst forth. It's talking about waters that were under, we're talking about wells and things like that, that all of a sudden the waters were released. My version says the windows of heaven were opened. Your version may say something similar to that. Other versions use this very specific word called a firmament. And what that's talking about, and many people believe because the same word firmament is used in the Genesis creation account, that God created the firmament above the waters. So it was almost like an atmosphere of water, a layer of water above the sky. And it's almost like God took a pin and popped that layer of water to send the waters bursting forth. The windows of heavens were opened. And it says that rain fell upon the earth for 40 days and for 40 nights. This really struck me because I was remembering back to last year, all 8 days ago. Last year, I couldn't remember, maybe you can help me. It was either May or June, one of those months. We just had a ton of rain. Seemed like every day. Do you guys remember that it just felt like it was raining every day? And I remember if it rained 2 days in a row, it was just like, oh, just stop raining. And many of us are like, oh, the rain, we can't take it. And then we read this account here. This was a constant rain that did not let up for 40 days. Some of us lose it after 2. Maybe if you're good, 3. They were inside this boat, so there was this constant noise hitting the boat of rain. Maybe they got used to it because it was just always there. But I imagine that was just a hard thing to just endure. And it says the rains were coming, the flood was coming, and we see that through all of this destruction, God preserved life. Not just with human life, but with these animals. God looked and he said, all of this, remember, the whole reason that the flood was coming was because man was evil. Man was corrupt. Man had no thought of God. And so God said, we've got to do a redo. And he said, Noah, you're it. You're going to be preserved, you and your family. We're starting over with your family. But we need some animals too. So let's bring some animals, and we're going to continue with those animals. Verse 17, the flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them from 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth. Birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed in the earth 150 days. So the first thing we see, this was a lot for this family to deal with. The Bible doesn't say if they had daily chores on the boat. Some people speculate that maybe God put them into a hibernation of sorts on the boat. We don't know that. That's just people speculating. They could have been alive and well and making loud noises. I don't know. So there was probably some kind of daily routine chore duty with all the family going on with on the boat. They also were dealing with, they probably had people they knew, friends, other family, not in the boat. They were dealing with that. They had to deal with this reality that when this is all over, it's just going to be us. This wasn't a localized flood. This was a global, worldwide flood. They had 40 days of constant rain to deal with. Consistent, constant rain that didn't stop. And they were stuck inside of this boat, with all of these animals, and they couldn't leave. It started snowing just a little bit the other day, and I don't don't know what it is. My dad was in the Navy, and he was stationed in Denver when I was in high school and when I was learning to drive. So I learned to drive with snow and all that stuff. And when it would begin to snow, me and my buddies, we'd call each other up, and it was like, where are we going to go? Let's go drive in the snow. And that was just a mindset. And even when I was in Bible college in Missouri, and it would snow a lot there, and snow and ice, and I worked with a bunch of guys. They had pickup trucks, and I had a Jeep Cherokee with four-wheel drive. And when it would snow really bad, we all had chains. And after work, we'd get off work and it's like, hey, let's go drive on the highway and see if people slid into the ditches, and we'll pull them out for fun. Like, that was our version of fun, apparently. I don't know. Let me just drive around. I loved driving in the snow. And I understand not everyone is like that. I get it. Here in Maryland, if we get a half inch of snow, shut down the schools, shut down the stores, go get 3 gallons of milk and 5 gallons of water and buy out the groceries. I understand. I get it. But for me, instinctively, as soon as it starts snowing, and this happened, was it yesterday? Yesterday it was snowing. And while it was snowing, my only thought was like, where are we going to go? Let's go driving. Come on. Let's go drive around. So we went to the mall. My thought is just to drive around at it. And I know some people are like, lock the doors. We're not going anywhere. And, there's this thing about being able to go somewhere because you can. I was in one snowstorm where we couldn't leave. This is when my dad was stationed in Omaha, Nebraska. And we had this big snowstorm, and it was amazing. It sent like just this pile of snow up against the front door that covered the door. Like, we opened the door and it didn't move. It was just snow. It was awesome. We couldn't leave. And that's frustrating, isn't it? It's when we can't leave. That's what gets frustrating. For they were on the boat. Not just the 40 days of rain. It said that the water continued to rise until 150 days. And they were in this boat, and it was like, hey, I'm just going to go take a walk. No, I'm not. I'm going to go stroll down no. Imagine this level of frustration, like when you want to go to Chick-fil-A on Sunday. And you realize it's Sunday, and you can't, and that they were on this boat, but they couldn't leave. It talked about that the water was so high it spanned 15 cubits above the highest mountain. That just translates to 22 feet. So 22 feet above the highest mountains the water was. That's a lot of water, right? So that's where we have the situation that Noah and his family and these animals are in, and they're inside this boat. We're going to kind of fly through some verses now in chapter 8, and then we'll be closing just a few minutes after that. But chapter 8, verse 1. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark, and God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated, and in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand, and he took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. In the 601st year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, the waters were dried from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. So just a couple things that I'd never really done this before, but we're given very specific timelines here. And I, for the first time, just kind of wrote them all out just to picture them, to see what it was like for Noah on the boat. And it's probably a little more legible in your bulletin instead of on the screen there. But in the 600th year of Noah's life, second month, 17th day, that's when the flood began. 150 days later, the ark came to rest. I put Mount Ararat, but technically it's the mountains in Ararat. We don't know which mountain. And then it says 40 days later, so on the 10th month and the first day, the tops of the mountains could be seen from the ark. And then we have a little over a month later, it says that Noah sent out a raven and a dove, and they both returned. He waits a week, he sends the dove out, and it returns with the olive leaf. He waits one more week, sends the dove out, and this time it doesn't return. So take a look there on the timeline. That's in the 11th month on the 24th day. And then almost a little bit more than a month later, so still another month goes by. Now he removes the covering of the ark, and he's able to see, the Bible says that he saw that it was dry. But then look again, look now at the last line. It says in the second month of the 27th day. That's almost 2 months later. He had to wait a full another 2 months on that boat before they finally left the ark. Again, waiting. All in all, Noah and his family are on this boat for a year, approximately a year and 10 days. How would you do being on this boat with your family, with a bunch of animals? Then to be stopped, it looks, it says he took the covering off day one, 601st birthday. He took the covering off. His kids could see that it was dry. Dad, come on, let's go. We can't, not yet. Another 2 months on this boat. And then God said, it's time to go. So verse 20, they leave the ark. And then Noah built an altar and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So what did Noah first do? His first response when he leaves this boat, his first response is to give thanks to God. His first response is, guys, before we go out exploring, before we go and try and figure out where we are, before we go and we just start enjoying being off this boat, let's stop what we're doing and thank God because we are alive. He's preserved us. Every week people fill these cards out, and on the back there's a place for prayer requests. And one of the common prayer requests is when someone might be traveling. Pray for traveling mercies. Pray that we get there safe. Pray that we get back safely. My question is, we pray for it on the front end many times. But when we get to where we're going, do we stop and thank God? God, you answered my prayer. I asked you to get us here safely, and we're here safely. Or do we get there and just start going? I'm guilty of that big time. I ask, hey guys, pray for me, I'm traveling, and then I get there and I just do. And I never stop. And Noah gives us this example to thank God. Second thing we see is that God gave the promise of not destroying the earth in the same manner, that because of this thanks, because of this offering, God was pleased, and he said, I'm not going to do that in the same manner. And we see from the time that Noah was given this promise, waiting that 100 years, and from that week period of before just being in the ark, before the waters began, and then to be on the boat for over a year, and then have to wait to get off the boat. There was a lot of waiting involved, and my question is, how do you do that? How do we wait on the Lord? How should we wait? How should God's people wait? First thing we need to see is that we wait because we have hope. You don't wait for something that you think won't happen. You wait for things that you believe will happen. We have hope because we trust. We have hope because we trust. If you read Genesis chapter 6, you'll see again that Noah walked with God. He was a man of faith. And if you were to read throughout Scripture, you'll see that the righteous, it says that Noah was righteous. The righteous live by faith. We have hope because we trust. And it matters where the trust is. It matters what you're trusting in. It matters who you're trusting in. You can't just trust. You can't just believe for the sake of belief. It's what I'm placing my belief in that matters. I can go to the edge of a cliff, or I can go to the top of the Empire State Building, and I can say, I'm going to jump off, but I'm not going to die because I believe I won't die. That's belief in belief's sake. It matters what or who you put your trust in. And we have a solid foundation of God in Jesus. We place our trust in Him. We trust because we have faith. In Hebrews chapter 11, it talks about faith and all of these men and women of faith. And it also says that faith is the evidence of things hoped for. When the Bible uses this word hope, it's not using the word hope the way you and I tend to use the word hope. We tend to use the word hope like wish. I wish that would happen. But we don't really think it will happen. When they use the word hope in the Bible, there's a specific terminology attached to the word hope, and it's a confident expectation. You firmly believe it will happen. You're expecting it to happen. We trust and we have hope because we have faith. Faith comes from not seeing, but believing. If we wait until we see it to believe, that's not really believing, because you had to have it proven. God has proven Himself over and over, which is our next. Number 4, we have faith because God has shown Himself worthy of it. God continues to show Himself worthy. He proves Himself time and time and time and time again. But there's always something in front of you that will require faith. It could be an obstacle. And I just want to illustrate this. I had to do it, sorry. Let me get, you know what, there's midshipmen here. Can I get 3 midshipmen to join me on stage? I need, just really quickly, I'll wait for you to come before I call you out. There's 2, give me one more. All right, awesome. Give it up for these guys, all right. Yeah, come on up here. James, stand back here for a second. Michael, you come over here behind this guitar. Travis, you come way over here, just a little bit in front of Michael. In our lives, there's always something in front of us, some kind of obstacle that requires faith. If we stand right here, and Travis, you're the obstacle. That's the thing. Face Travis. He's in your way, and that's the thing that's in front of us that we think God can never answer that. God can never get us through that. And we look at that obstacle in front of us and we're like, it just seems impossible. But what we tend to forget, if we turn around, Michael, God there are so many things in between from our past to where we are now that God has brought us through. And if we were to look back and see that God has shown himself faithful, you're the good things that God has done. He's shown himself. He's gotten us through obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, through trial and trial and trial. And there's so much that we can look back at here, that we look at the little gap here and the trial here, and we see that's too big. But if we would just look back at this huge gap of all that God has shown himself worthy of, this would be nothing. He has shown himself worthy. You guys can have a seat. Give it up for our midshipmen. Good trial. Sorry to do that to you. Not sorry. God has shown himself worthy of our faith. And that will allow us to number 5, that will allow us to wait with eager anticipation. God may have placed a burden on your heart, something that he wants for you. And God is preparing you, and you may find yourself in the middle of a waiting process, and it's frustrating at times. And it's hard at times. But we can trust that God is in control. And because God is in control, that builds our faith. And because our faith is built up, we can wait in eager anticipation for that. We can enjoy the waiting process. It doesn't have to be a time of suffering. It doesn't have to be a time of enduring. But if we can see that as part of the process and enjoy that part of the process of God preparing you, he has something for you. I trust his plan is greater than my plan. So the question is, do you trust him enough to wait in eager anticipation for what he has for you? It's easier said than done, right? When you're in the middle of it, it's hard. But guys, let's look back at what God has done to know what he will do. Let's pray.